What's up, passionate Pokemon players? I'm Ryan, and we're here for another episode of the Hawks Pokemon Nest. Excited, as always, we're going to get into a Misty deck today. Misty's Gyarados for the most part, but everybody's involved, all of her Pokemon, except one, I'll mention. But we're going to go through this time the profile and overview of the deck, go through each card in it, why I included it, then we'll go through the strategy, strengths, and weaknesses of the deck. Finally, we'll get into some other cards to consider swapping in or out. So, let's go. Alright, we've got, as always, the deck list up on the left-hand side. If you're on desktop, it will be much easier to see than if you are on mobile, but that's alright. We're going to talk about each one. Don't forget the description always has the full deck list in there, and you can actually just copy and paste that bad boy if you want to export it into TCG Live. So, here we go. The deck revolves around Misty's Gyarados, as I always love me some Gyarados. At first, I didn't think I would be able to make this one work, but as I thought more about it, I thought, you know what, there's actually some cards to help us go here. Alright, so the Gyarados, obviously stage 1 Pokemon evolving from the Misty's Magikarp. 180 HP, so solid for a one prizer stage 1 Pokemon, but still going to be very squishy. It has Waterfall for 120 for 3 energy. We're not going to use that. We're going to use its first attack, Splashing Panic. This is a crazy attack, right? So it does 70 damage. 70x, right? So discard the top 7 cards of your deck, and this attack does 70 damage for each Misty's Pokemon that you discarded in this way. So top 7, let's say you hit on all 7, which is going to be rare. You're going to do 490 damage. Whoa, boy! We about to get anybody one shot there, okay? But it's very tough to hit on that. I think the most I've gotten is I've hit on I've hit on maybe 5 of these 7 and hit for 350, which even in that way is going to one-shot anything, almost. So it's a cool move, and the deck is basically built upon trying to stack that deck and make it happen. I've actually never played a Pokemon deck like this, but it reminds me a little bit of a Dragon Ball deck that I'm also playing recently, which was why I kind of came back to this. Anyway, let's look at the Misty's Magikarp. Now, Magikarp is always a scary Pokemon to play because it only has 30 HP. However, they did think about Pokemon Company did that Dragapult exists and gave them some help. So it has its ability is So Submerged. So as long as this Pokemon is on your bench, prevent all damage from and effects of attacks from your opponent's Pokemon done to this Pokemon. So basically, on the bench, it's invincible. You can't put damage or effects, which gets it immune to Dragapult's attacks. So that's really good. It really helps us out in this regard. So they're going to have to do something like boss it up, and then get damage counters on other Pokemon. But Magikarp itself is protected. That doesn't mean that we want to take our time in evolving it. I would probably evolve this bad boy as quickly as possible. Alright, so let's move on to the others. This deck, considering the fact that we're discarding all of Misty's Pokemon, the only other Pokemon that I'm using in this deck are going to be Misty's Pokemon. Now, this one is probably the best one that fits the deck the most is Misty's Psyduck. 70 HP, Sprinkle Water. We're not, oh, excuse me. We're not attacking with this Psyduck, though. Notice its ability, Flustered Leap, which just goes perfectly with Gyarados. So, check it out. Once during your turn, if this Pokemon's on your bench, discard the bottom card of your deck. If you do, discard all cards from this Pokemon and put this Pokemon on top of your deck. So we put him on top, so basically he's going to help us be one of those 7 cards that Gyarados is discarding. So pretty cool, right? I love it. Okay, then from there, Misty's Staryu and Misty's Starmie are kind of backup attackers, but obviously also they're more so to discard. So we have the Staryu, Bubble Beam 20, 70 HP, cool. It at least has 70 HP, so isn't going to get one shot by Dragapult. And then notice the Starmie actually is a good Pokemon to come in if our Gyarados just kind of isn't ready to go. or we want to maybe just get some, ensure that we get some damage without discard. Abrupt Flash does 60 damage, and if the this Pokemon evolved from Misty Staryu during this turn, it's going to do 80 more damage. So for 1 energy, you can hit for 140. So not bad at all either. So that is pretty much all of our Pokemon for the deck, okay? So let's get into the trainers then. So trainers, we're back to it, back on the grind of Buddy-Buddy Poffin. We're going to throw 4 of them in there because we really do want to get those Magikarps on bench, and even Psyduck as well. Okay, then Earthen Vessel. This one was a later add to the deck because I only have... as you'll see at the end, I only have 6 energies in this deck. I do want to be able to pull them quickly, and it also helps me to just kind of discard cards I don't necessarily need in hand. And a lot of times those can be Pokemon, so that I can just throw them back into the deck, which will have many ways of doing so. Okay, then the Max Rod. So Max Rod, I decided... as the Aspec, you know, I'm not completely sold on it. It's done me well, but there are many other ways of working this. But I do like the fact that it's 5, any combination of Pokemon and energy, because I do need the energy considering I only have 6, and we're milling 7 cards from our deck each time. We don't need a ton of energy to make this deck work, but the option of putting 5 straight to hand to me is really nice, so I've kept this one in. Okay, then we have the Night Stretcher. Night Stretcher, I went down to 2. I went back and forth on like numbers. I eliminated this completely at one point, but I think it really works just to have 2 of them in there to give us option to return to hand if needed, and just really get more recursion options in general. Now, Sacred Ash is kind of the MVP of the deck. It's a new card in Destined Rivals, probably created just for this deck too, right? So this is going to help us not only not deck out, but really we're putting those Pokemon that we're milling back into the deck. It also means that I'm not too worried about even discarding Pokemon from my hand. So we're going to shuffle up to 5 Pokemon from our discard pile back into the deck. So just a great card. We're running 4 of those. Then Super Rod as well. I'm just running 2 of them. So I settled for 2 and 2 of Night Stretcher and Super Rod. Again, because I need the options of also getting energy. Because the Sacred Ash only lets us get Pokemon. So that's pretty much most of our recursion. We've got one more. We'll talk about in a minute. Then we've got the tried and true 3 Ultra Ball. Now this one is a perfect card for this deck, Academy at Night. Once during each player's turn, that player may put a card from their hand on top of their deck. So that's why it is actually good to have Pokemon in hand, because basically we can guarantee ourselves 2 if we can get ourselves a Psyduck on bench and then a Academy at Night. Which means we're going to be able to stack our deck with the Psyduck, stack our deck with the Academy at Night. Now our top 2 are Pokemon, and then that makes it the next 5 are the random ones, so we can hope to hit on those. And you can do it in any order. Just make sure that you do this right before you attack along with Psyduck, and you don't do something like, I don't know, use an Ultra Ball and then shuffle your deck. Okay, tried and true 3 bosses orders. Now here's another great stacking option. Now this is going to get us to where we can actually overall plan for 4 Pokemon on our deck. So 4 times 7 is going to get us 280 guaranteed if we can get the Ciphermaniac. And I put 4 of it in here. So search your deck for 2 cards, shuffle your deck, then put those 2 cards on top in any order. So now we're up even further to where we can use Ciphermaniac, 2 Pokemon on top. Then we can use Psyduck, 3. Then we can use the Academy at Night, and that's going to get us our top 4 cards to be guaranteed Pokemon. Not bad. It is something we need. You know, you can't always hit on it, but it at least guarantees us. If you can't use Academy at Night and Psyduck, you at least have Ciphermaniac's Codebreaking. Okay. Then Iono, we need a way of just getting out of a bad hand, which does happen sometimes, so I went with 3. And here is another one, is Miriam. I really like this card. It's a draw power and recursion. We shuffle up to 5 Pokemon from our discard pile into our deck. So that's 5 whole Pokemon. That's pretty good. If we shuffle, draw 3 cards. So really good one there. I included 3 of them, I believe. Let's see, Miriam, where's it on my list? Yep, 3 Miriams. I would go 4, but it's a trainer, and you know we do really want to use Ciphermaniac some more. So boom, and then we just have our 6 basic water energy. These strategy strengths and weaknesses of the deck. First off, you want to get your Gyarados in the active spot. Usually, I'm just going to take a chance, and if I have the option, I'm going to put that Magikarp in the active spot and just kind of hope and pray that I'm able to evolve it into the Gyarados. I've kind of done some trial and error where maybe first I put the Staryu out there. I think it works off best if I go ahead and just throw out the Magikarp, knowing that even if it gets knocked out, we don't have to worry about about losing all of our Magikarps because we just have so much recursion in the deck. So just throw them out there, take a chance, and hope that you get all of the pieces in order to evolve him and get an energy on him, because that's all we really need. Evolve an energy to especially early game where we don't necessarily need to deal a ton of damage by stacking our deck. You know, out of 7, you're usually going to hit on 2, which is at least going to get you 140 damage. If your opponent's Pokemon aren't evolved yet, that's going to take out most anything. 210 if you hit on 3 of those 7, which is less than 50%, is still going to let you knock out almost any basic EX as well, right? All right, then from there, you know, focus on getting our Stadium out and benching Psyducks. You know, whenever we draw into that Ciphermaniacs, it would be nice if we also had some Pokegear, but, you know, we don't. Didn't really have room for it, so there's that. And then just repeat, you know, just keep that Gyarados up there, get the Psyducks, get the Pokemon in hand, and see if we can high roll on our discards. The strengths, I mean, this deck can do crazy damage. I always talk about how, like, you know, we get some high roll damage out here, and I think we've had some decks that, you know, flip until we get tails, but we've never had a deck that its attack can one-shot anything. I mean, I guess this is kind of rolling too. It's almost like you're flipping 7 coins, but I think it's less than 50% for many. But anyway, 490 max damage if we hit on 7, and the fact that we could potentially stack 4 of those to guarantee us 280 is pretty crazy, right? And then the recursion is great. There's just plenty of ways of putting cards back in the deck so we don't deck out. And in fact, the longer this game goes, the more chances we have of these being Pokemon, because as we're drawing into our trainers and item cards and using them and returning our Pokemon to deck, you just get much more chance of those being higher and higher that they're Pokemon as the game goes along. And we really have solid ways of stacking. I mean, the fact that we can almost guarantee 4 of these Pokemon are going to be well, 4 of the top cards on your deck or Pokemon are pretty good, right? The weaknesses here, though, it is of course RNG based. You can just roll and I mean, I've stacked my deck with Psyduck before, and that was the only one out of the whole 7. Like that's pretty crazy, but it does happen. It's also really squishy, you know, and it's not the like most straightforward setup, you know, because we're also milling, so you do have the chance that you just mill a bunch of Psyducks. I mean, I'm sorry, that you mill a bunch of Magikarp and you don't have one ready to go next. It's a little bit more to keep track of, even though it's squishy because of that whole mill thing that's going on here. So it's not as straightforward as I thought, but it is actually a little bit easier to kind of get going than I thought, because it's kind of it has some great synergy to it, but you do have to be careful and keep track of, you know, what's in your discard and what's not, and use the best cards in your hand, keeping that in mind because we're milling things away. Now, some other cards to consider swapping into the deck. The first one would be the Misty's Lapras, right? This is a solid card. It's just, to me, it's just one that we don't necessarily need, and if I were to cut one, I would cut this one. Number one, it's 110 HP, means that I can't pull it with the Buddy-Buddy Poffin. Also, I'm not really going to do much with it except use Swim Together, which is good, right? Search your deck for up to 3 Misty's Pokemon, reveal, put them into hand, then shuffle your deck. Solid, but I mean, if I'm doing this, then I'm basically like gonna admit that like I'm wasting an energy and not doing damage. I mean, we could use them to stack our deck. It's just one that I cut, right? I had too many Pokemon. I need some trainers in there. I don't think I would cut any of the others. So, I don't know. I went with the Lapras as the cut, okay? Next up, I think, you know, it'd be really nice to find a way to fit this card in. I just have so many trainers, and I'm already kind of running 2-ofs of a lot of, which I don't like for consistency in decks as is. So I just don't see a way of fitting the Pokegear in there as much as I would like to. Let me know if you find a way of doing it in the comments, because it would be really nice to have a way of, you know, looking at our top 7 and finding that Ciphermaniac's code breaking. So I think if we could find a way, it'd be nice, right? Professor's Research is a card I was running in some earlier iterations of the deck. We're already discarding enough. Yes, we do have a lot of recursion in there, but I just wasn't really feeling it. I was discarding too much in there, so I kind of went with the Iono and the Miriam instead for draw power. Okay, now Lanas Aid is another interesting one too. In terms of recursion, we're putting them straight to our hand, so it does, you know, give us the ability to stack the deck more. But I'm finding a lot more often I'd rather just throw them into the deck and go from there. Hassle's another interesting one as well. So you can use this only if your Pokemon were knocked out, right? So look at the top 8, put 3 into my hand, shuffle the rest. I think it's a good one. I actually never thought of this one before. A friend of mine, you know, kind of brought this one up. It's a solid one for 1 prize or decks, because we are going to have Pokemon knocked out a lot. And it's almost like a searcher. We can grab 3, which 3 is a pretty solid amount. And really 8 to search, but just another one I can't really find a way to get it in. Now the last 2 were the Aspecs, right? So Amulet of Hope would be the other one I would think about for an Aspec over the Max Rod, right? So we can attach it, and we can search our deck for 3 cards, put them into our hand when a Pokemon is knocked out. It's almost like a better version of Hassle, actually, because we search our whole deck. But you know, it's one to think about. But like, what are those 3 going to be? It can help us, for example, get the stadium and all that. But considering it's a one-of and there's no good way of searching it anyway, I'd just rather go with adding in more recursion. I mean, sure, we can't search that one, but it just kind of goes on theme with the rest. The one I would think about a little bit over that one would be the Unfair Stamp. It's almost like another Iono in there, another way of getting out of a bad hand. So I do like the Unfair Stamp is maybe like the second favorite of all of the Aspecs. Alright, well that's going to do it for this episode of the Hawks Pokemon Nest. Hope you enjoyed this demo or this overview and profile of the Gyarados deck. Always love me when I can make a good Gyarados deck. Hopefully we get some more of them out there one day so that I can continue to make these out here. But this was cool. And Misty, Psyduck, it's all these old school Pokemon as well. So if you liked what you saw, make sure you hit that subscribe button and become part of the Hawks Nest, a fearless flock of fabulous folks who love to do what we love out here. I love making these videos. I'm excited for later in the week. Make sure that you stay tuned, because we are going to have the demo of the deck on TCG Live. Let's see if we can high roll into some wins on there. But until then, we'll see you next time.